Hello, I'm Scott Bulky here with Jack Congdon ahead of his fight against Ali Zebian. How are you doing today?
Yes, sir. Doing good. Weight's on point. Feeling good mentally and physically. Looking forward to the fight.
And how are you expecting this fight to go? Do you feel like he'll take it to the ground? Do you think he'll keep it standing? How do you think the fight will play out?
Yeah, I mean, he generally tries to mix it up, and generally speaking, most guys do when they feel me in there. They try to get it to the ground. They very quickly get uncomfortable on the feet between the power and the precision. So I expect that he'll try to get it there at some point. He's a tough guy, but I believe wherever the fight goes, I'm gonna find that finish.
And do you feel like with this victory, it is time to get that second opportunity at the title?
So it's kind of up in the air because John Piersma, who won the belt,
Yeah.
um, he tore his ACL and he had to have surgery. So, um, I mean, I'd imagine that's a long recovery time. I don't really know how that picture is going to play out. I'm just focused on going in there, continuing to win fights, and building myself to the contender this fall. So if the belt happens, cool. But if it's kind of held up, then whatever. I've got bigger things in my mind. So
And has there been any talks about the Contender Series next fall, or do you feel like you are just one or two wins away from it?
I mean, I don't have any like inside information about that, but I go and win this fight. I'm 6-1.
Yeah.
I go in, get another fight in either March or May, and I'd be 7-1, and I'd be in prime position to be on the contender. So no inside information or anything like that, but I go in there and I keep leveling up, keep beating good guys, and I believe I'll be in prime position.
Yeah, exactly. And like you're saying, you have got an impressive record. Five, this would be victories, one defeat, five victories so far. All of them have become because of a stoppage. Do you feel like that what brings more eyes onto you is because you have got that 100% finishing record?
Yeah, without a doubt, man. I mean, it's a big difference between myself, my mindset, and a lot of guys that go in there. A lot of guys are
Yeah,
in there to compete. They're happy to get a win. I'm in there, and regardless of whether the fight is on the feet or on the ground, I'm looking to build towards that finish the entire time. You know, um, my single mindset is to go in there and strike down my opponent and win in dramatic and violent fashion. So you see it in all my fights, and I think people see that too. They recognize when you're not in there just to win; you're in there to really seal the deal and put on a show.
exactly. Because not only are they finishes, they're first round finishes as well. So the saying goes, you're not getting paid for the full 15 minutes, you're just getting paid for
Yeah,
the fight.
yeah. We're not working by the hour.
And have what have been the main improvements since your last fight?
I'm always working everywhere, man. I'm always working super hard in every aspect of the sport. So I'm always getting better at striking, whether it be different combinations that we work on, fine tuning a particular technique. I've been working a lot of like MMA specific stuff with Dan Savory. So big shout out to him. We've been doing a lot of like striking to grappling and then transitions on the ground. So I've been working a lot of that. And then my strength conditioning with Chad Ferry is always leveling up. I'm always getting stronger. Cardio is always getting better, always getting faster. So it's never just one thing. I'm always becoming a better martial artist, a better person, more confident in myself everywhere within the game. And yeah, that's going to show come January 25th.
And is the plan, is that for four fights this year? One come January 25th, one in March, the Contender Series come fall, and then one UFC fight before the end of the year.
That would be ideal, yeah. It's always tough, depending on how things play out
Yeah,
with, you get
injuries.
dinged up here and there. And like if you're on the contender later in the season, it's a little bit tougher to, squeeze in when you just fought in, say, October. But that would be the ideal picture. Yeah, I like where your head's at too.
And what do you feel like? how would you describe yourself as a fighter? Like, if you were to describe your style of fights, what would that be?
Tenacious. I'm always coming forward, always looking to get the finish, always building my momentum. I'm never gonna quit in there. That spirit in me is always going to remain, and I'm always going to look for the finish. Um, I'm precise with my strikes, and I'm bringing them with a lot of firepower.
And do you feel like the welterweight division is one of the strongest divisions in the UFC? You have also the champion Bial, then you have the contenders Shavkat, Ian Gary, Leon Edwards, Jack Della Mandela. How do you feel like the division is currently playing out?
I, I like where it's headed because you're kind of seeing the changing of the guard kind of finally happen. Like the guys that you just named there are kind of set to take over the division in the next few years. And they've even got a few more really good guys coming up that I'm always watching the UFC fights, seeing what these guys are doing. And there's quite a few guys that it's like, okay, yeah, in a few years, this is who's going to be at the top. Yeah, it's good to see guys like Colby kind of, not that he's out, but like he's not going to be holding up title
Yeah.
fights anymore or anything like that. So the guard is definitely changing, and that's very exciting. And it's good because these guys are all pretty well rounded, and guys like Shavkat especially, pretty dynamic and exciting finishers. So the division is definitely on the way up.
And is there anyone currently in the UFC that you're wanting to make that debut against?
Um, I don't know about the debut specifically. That's still a little ways away, but my dream fight in the UFC has always been against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. That's not a realistic debut. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't need to take anybody right now, especially somebody that would just be making their debut. But I started in Taekwondo, and you see it in my style, right? Like um, that traditional background that you just don't see a lot of. And I've always wanted to have that fight play out like karate versus taekwondo. So that would be kind of like my dream fight in the UFC. Obviously, like I said, not going to be the debut. He doesn't need to fight somebody that hasn't built their name up yet. But I hope to get that fight in before all is said and done because that would be a lot of fun.
And how did you, oh, like you said, you come from that Taekwondo background, but how did you get into MMA as a whole?
Uh, I was the kid that had way too much energy. My parents couldn't keep a hold of me. I tell this story all the time, but it's like, if they left me alone for 5 minutes, they'd find me 30 minutes later, 40 feet up a tree. You know, but literally, like they have stories of me, climbing up, and it's like, oh man, what are you gonna do? But I wasn't like a bad kid or anything. I just had a lot of energy, like a lot of
Yeah.
young boys do. So they wanted something that would kind of give me discipline, focus my energy, kind of have like an outlet. And they got me into Taekwondo and no-gi grappling when I was 8. So I started at Lakeville MMA, and I still train there to this day, and I'm coaching there as well. I run the homeschool kids program. So it's really cool to have started there when I was a kid, and now, I'm running
Yeah.
classes and I'm teaching the kids myself. So it's really cool.
And what do you feel like the main differences are between coaching the MMA and taking part?
Um, Main differences. I You kind of have to know what that person is good at, right? You can't really kind of try to impose your style on somebody, right? You can give everybody like a specific kind of set of moves, but like when you see them live, you kind of have to give them tips. You kind of have to learn, like, okay, what moves work well for them. You know, where are they positionally? What do they have to do? Whereas, like, I intuitively know my style, and when I'm coaching people, I kind of, you have to work with their frame, their athleticism, their skill set, and then kind of build them up from there. but it's great because it's almost kind of like extra mental reps for me too, right? Where it's like, you're seeing what they're doing, you're kind of fine tuning their technique, and it improves you too, and it keeps your mind in the game all the time. So I love it. It's awesome to be able to do what I love full time now.
And do you feel like it's only helping improve in your game because you're having to break down these techniques and you're having to go more in depth than what you probably would normally?
Oh, 100%. Exactly what you said. And it's breaking it down in depth. Speaking it out to somebody kind of like reinforces it to you. And then two, if somebody has a question and they can't get it immediately, it's like, okay, now I've got to kind of play with it and then see, okay, what little detail do I do maybe that I don't even realize that I do that hits this? And then like you find that little detail and you pass it on to that person and then they hit it and it's like, oh, it's kind of that creative process the whole time where yeah, you're finding those fine-tuned little details. It's great, like you said.
And I guess when you are like you're saying, you have to tailor it to each person individually. When you're doing that, it might just be a new technique even that makes it just a little bit easier for you to get locked in if you are doing a choke, or it might just be that little bit that you didn't quite think of when you were first doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then that makes me a better teacher. Uh, Hopefully makes, the people I'm teaching better martial artists. And yeah, we just get to pass on the skills and the discipline and yeah, it's cool.
Which one of your fights so far do you feel like has been that toughest test? Do you think it was that title fight defeat, or was there another fighter that has been a bit more difficult that you've overcame?
No, without a doubt, it was the title fight. Um, that was my first fight that went over 5 minutes, pro or amateur. And it was the one, every fight has moments of adversity. Um, it was definitely the fight that I had the most adversity in, getting taken down, having to build myself back up multiple times. Unfortunately, my nose broke really early doing it during it. Like first clean punch that landed. I've been kind of dealing with it in camp, and then it just started gushing throughout the fight. But despite those, bits of adversity, I was still pushing forward, trying to find that finish, trying to get that knockout. Was never going to quit in there. And I took a lot from it. It was a lot of really good experience. My game has really gone, to a new level since then, working on certain things that, were exposed that I needed to work on. And so, yeah, with that test, I only got better, and I'm making sure that that won't happen again.
And was it good to see how like your cardio lasts? Because like you're saying, it was the first time you got past that first round. You were able to see how it lasted and what you were able to possibly like improve on in the next fight.
Exactly. Right. Right. That was a big thing, right? It's like, you get these quick finishes and that's great, right? Like you don't want to go and have a war every time, but it's different when you believe that you can do it versus when you have done it, So that
Yeah.
kind of, it gave me confidence even in that. So
And do you feel like one of the things that Ali does have to his advantage is the fact he's been in that cage 15 times compared to your six. And if you're able to overcome that challenge, get that victory, it just makes that win even sweeter, knowing that it is against someone that has got a lot more experience over you.
yeah, I mean the last guy I fought had 18 fights,
Yeah.
so he had a lot of experience. He was on the contender, had fought in the PFL. Zebian has fought in the PFL too. Even my last two fights before that were, Piersma had a lot more experience on me. Wound up fighting in Road to UFC, and the last couple of guys before that were Bellator guys. So I've fought some of these guys with experience, so that doesn't really phase me. Is it an edge on paper? Sure, but a fight is all about who can implement their will and their game plan. And the experience helps. You've seen things before. But at the end of the day, every fight plays out on its own, right? Like when we get in there, all those other fights don't matter, and it's only those 15 minutes
Yeah.
that really matter. And like I've been able to do before against opponents that have had more experience, I'm going to implement my game plan and my will. But yeah, I mean, it is. It will be a great win to have over a guy that's been in the PFL and that has that much experience. Yeah.
And then obviously heading into some fights in the UFC, you have got some very wide on odds, like 7-1 for a win. Do you feel like that the odds don't really represent the fight? Because at the end of the day, it is just two people going in there. It could just be one elbow that changes the fight completely into the other guy's favor.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the fight, right? Like, I think the craziest one that I ever saw was like Chimaev versus Diaz, right? That was like 20-1 or something like that.
Yeah,
But that one, I almost honestly kind of agree with, right? Because it's not like Diaz is going to one punch Chimaev. Um, Generally speaking, yeah, like when you do see those 7-1, like sometimes 10-1 odds, it's like, obviously it's there for a reason and it's a mismatch. But yeah, I mean, if we're talking betting, I'm never going to try to drop, $1,000 to make 100 on a guy like that. The value just isn't there. Like you're saying, it's like one punch can screw this whole thing up, and that's what makes MMA great. Is you can have those huge underdog stories. Am I somebody that throws money on that big of a dog? I'm not really that person either, but yeah, fights are crazy, and that's why we love MMA.
and so last year you did have three fights, including that title fight. Was that the goal when you headed into 2024? Was to have that type of schedule?
Yeah, I wanted a fourth fight. I wound up getting a little bit dinged up at the end of the year that prevented it. My goal going into the year was that I wanted 3 wins. And then obviously I lost the fight for the title. So after that, I was like, yeah, I got to get back in 2 more times this year to get to that 3-win goal. I won once in September after that, got a little bit dinged up after that. But it was still a good year, and it's only going to be a bigger year in 2025.
Exactly. And even though it might not be MMA, do you still go into competitions like Taekwondo competitions, grappling matches? Do you still do that throughout the year, keeping yourself active?
No, no, I don't. Yeah, it's the risk reward for it
Yeah.
just isn't there to me right now. I want to stay active in MMA and focus my training fully towards that.
Well, I know you're gonna go out there, get another first round no stoppage, and we'll be able to see you on the Contender Series this incoming fall. Is
Hell
there
yeah.
is there anything you're wanting to add or anyone else you're wanting to shout out?
Yeah, shout out all my training partners, all the teams that I've been training at, um, and my sponsors as well. Let me pull up all my sponsors and make sure that I don't forget anybody. Yeah, so shout out Dogtown over in Lakeville. They're like a doggy daycare center. Chavert Construction, uh, Kyler's Catch. They're the only place that I get my seafood from. They're here in New Bedford, so yeah, that helps me big time with the weight cut. Having that lean protein, that's very important. Waterman Building and Remodeling. Everybody in the Lakeville area has seen them. There's signs all over. So if you need a roof, hit them up. Nuance Salon and Spa. Why Not a Pair? This is actually a really cool one. They're a charity that builds funds towards special needs education. Yeah, if that's something that anybody that's watching is interested in, you could go to their website and donate there. That's a really good cause. The law offices of Daniel Clifford. He does like work comp injuries and those type of cases. And then lastly, refab painting and renovations. They're also out of Lakeville. So yeah, people in Lakeville probably see their signs all the time too. So yeah, I got a ton of sponsors. Yeah, super grateful for them. They're definitely making it possible for me to go at this 100% and build my way to the UFC at the end of this year. So thank you to everybody on the team.
Well, that sounds great, and I can't wait to see you get that victory. Thank you for coming on.
Hell yeah, thanks, Scott.